Welcome to another episode of Writing on Caffeine, the podcast where you can come along on a journey with a father and daughter as we attempt to write our first novels. I am Jonathan Franzone, and this is my daughter.
And I'm Reagan, also Franzone.
What are you drinking this evening, Reagan?
I'm drinking some Earl Grey tea with a splash of milk.
I am also drinking Earl Grey tea. Hold the milk.
Mm.
We are recording tonight from a beach condo on the beach because our family is vacationing and we decided it would be a lovely time to go to the beach in February.
Yeah, absolutely. That way we can sit inside and read.
Yeah, the past couple of days have been a little cold, but the weather says that it should warm up later in the week. So tomorrow looks like it might be nice. So we have been going down to the water even though it's cold.
I haven't.
And the views have been absolutely gorgeous. We're on like the 17th floor. So that's been very nice.
It's very inspiring.
So how's the writing going, Reagan?
We talked about writing a lot today.
We did. We had a nice drive together, you and I. So we talked about some writing, try to work through some issues.
Yeah, I got some plot holes that we covered up.
And that's probably the most writing that I've done since we recorded, because I haven't done anything, absolutely nothing, which is terrible, because it reminds me of the penalty for not finishing my novel. So I had to read Twilight.
How'd that go?
And watch the movie. So I did read the book, and it was wonderful. Wonderfully cringy.
Yeah, wonderfully cringy. This is true.
And then we watched the movie, and that was cringy times a million. It was way amped up, and I was not prepared for that. So
it's a good time.
Yeah. So just a reminder before we get back into our topic, we are hosting a giveaway for 3 books on writing. So stick around until the end to hear more about that, or hit pause and go to the website writingoncaffeine.com to enter the giveaway. So tonight we are going to talk about conflict.
Yes.
And so first I thought I would read the Merriam-Webster definition of conflict. So as a noun, it can mean fight, battle, or war, an armed conflict, which is very appropriate for many novels.
Yes.
It can be a competitive or opposing action of incompatibles, antagonistic state or action, as of divergent ideas, interests, or persons. So a conflict of principles. Can be mental struggle resulting from incompatible or opposing needs, drives, wishes, or external or internal demands. And it can mean the opposition of persons or forces that gives rise to the dramatic action in a drama or fiction, which is also quite appropriate. Yeah. So I thought we would start off with a couple questions. So can you have a decent story, a novel specifically, without conflict?
No.
Very simple. No. The answer is no. So why not?
If you're reading something without conflict, then you're reading a perfect world.
Right.
And that's not entertaining.
Yeah. Why is that not entertaining?
Because you're just happy all the time. Like there's no there's
Right.
nothing to overcome. There's nothing to engage with.
Yeah, there's no action, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to overcome.
Right. It's not like there's just nobody to fight. Like there's no internal conflict. There's no like personal conflict.
It would be like watching the grass grow.
Yeah. That would be the worst.
So fiction mirrors or amplifies real life. People write fiction in order to reflect something about real life. And real life has conflict.
Yeah.
So you and I don't have like superhero conflict or magical conflict, but we all have struggles. Everybody on the planet does, because it's a fallen world. And so if you're reading or writing a book that has absolutely no struggle, no conflict, then it's, like we said, going to be very boring.
Yeah.
So there are 2 types of conflict. There's internal and external.
Yeah.
So external conflict would be like a conflict with another character, with society, with government, nature, technology, aliens. Those are just
Yeah.
some examples.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and internal conflicts, why don't you read those?
So internal conflicts could be like personal dilemmas, fears, desires, emotions, um, psychological split personality, like type warring, like internal warfare kind of
Right.
situation. Um, Anything where it's not like a physical, like you're fighting yourself.
Yeah. I think internal conflicts are probably more accurate to real life.
Mm-hmm.
Like we probably all individually have a lot of internal conflicts that we deal with every day. And then the external conflicts we have are not like grandiose or worth writing stories about.
Right.
Some people do, and they write biographies and they're amazing, but for most of us we live pretty normal lives.
Mm-hmm.
You have jobs, you have children, you have wives, and those things are all not epic,
Indeed.
but they are all good. So we have a list of benefits of conflict, benefits with respect to what they add to a story. So I've got 15 here.
Oh my goodness.
So we can go down the list. We can skip some if you want. And I tried to put examples for each of them, but if you think of a different example, then you can bring that up or we can
Mm-hmm. You're
we can
always so prepared. I appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm just like, what if we did a podcast on this? And then here you are with this list of
Yeah.
things.
One of my internal and external conflicts is unpreparedness.
More of a pantser.
So the first benefit of conflict is that it drives narrative momentum. So conflict introduces the crucial elements of challenge and adversity. It propels the story forward. It keeps the narrative dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And so the example I have, which I've actually read this book, is Dune by Frank Herbert. And so the conflict is actually over the rights to mine the spice off of this desert planet, Arrakis,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really the entire story. So the entire story is the conflict between these two factions or two groups of people. So there's the Harkonnens and then the other ones, which I can't remember their name, but the Harkonnens are they have to give up the mining of the spice, and so they leave, and then this other family, the Atreides come in and take over the mining.
Mm.
But then the Emperor goes kind of behind the scenes and gives an incentive to the Harkonnens to go back and like try to take it back from them.
Okay.
So he's basically trying to incite a war.
Cute.
And that is the whole story.
Nice.
So the next one, you want to take that?
Another benefit of conflict is it creates tension. It introduces suspense that keeps readers invested in the story, eager to see how the conflict will resolve. Like in The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, there's always like a tension where Katniss is facing like immediate mortal dangers in the arena. Um, and then also like the internal conflict of trying to play social games
Right.
and do what President Snow is asking for her without seeming like she's doing that, and she's like playing political games.
And Peeta versus Gale.
No, that was never a fight.
That was never a
It
fight.
wasn't a fight. Katniss thought it was a fight, but it wasn't.
Well, for her it was then, if she thought it was.
Mm.
So the next one is that it facilitates character arcs. So characters are defined and developed through the conflicts they encounter and how they change in response to those challenges. A great one is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. So Frodo has internal conflict, a lot of internal conflict regarding the ring of power that he has to carry. So it's kind of an external and internal conflict in that it's external because of the ring of power, but that creates in him like this pull towards evil but he's also, trying to do the right thing. And then, of course, there's tons of external conflict. They're being chased by orcs and all sorts of bad people
Mm-hmm.
and having to get this ring of Mount Doom to chuck it in.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about a great character arc? Prince Zuko from Avatar.
Prince Zuko does have a great character arc.
He's got lots of external and internal conflict.
That is true.
External conflict being, the Fire Lord
Yes.
trying to get him to um, capture the Avatar. The Avatar fighting him.
His
Admiral
sister,
Zhao.
Admiral Zhao.
And then his internal conflict is warring between, wanting honor and wanting to please his father while coming to grips with the fact that his father is kind of a terrible person.
Right.
And is this really the right thing to do? Like he literally has like he almost dies because he makes a decision that's like a good decision.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Uncle Iroh, he's the good influence on
Hmm.
him who's kind of building into him a moral compass,
Hmm.
which he has to wrestle with. So, yeah, that's a great, great character arc.
Conflict elicits emotional responses, fostering a deeper investment in the story and its characters from the reader. So going back to Hunger Games, Katniss's internal struggle with her identity and the external force controlling her life in the Hunger Games creates deep emotional connection with the readers,
Yeah,
which it does.
absolutely. So the next one is it increases the stakes. It raises stakes by introducing risks and consequences. It adds tension and urgency. Um, so a big conflict in Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, which I love that book. It's a great, great book. So the survival of humanity basically is has to deal with the conflict with this alien threat, which before Ender Wiggin is the main character. Before his time, the aliens attacked Earth and almost wiped out Earth,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of a last minute clutch situation. They fended them off. So now there's the ever present conflict or danger of them coming back to finish what they started, and so the humans are trying to go on the offense and take the war to them before they can have a chance to do that. And it
Mm-hmm.
drives an entire series of books, I think multiple series of books.
Yeah.
Uh, and the stakes are high, it's the stakes of the human race.
Mine 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So conflict introduces complexity. It adds layers to the story, making it more complex and nuanced rather than one dimensional. The example we have listed here is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I have not read that, so I don't know how that ties in.
I have read that, and it is a really good book if you love 80s pop culture.
Okay.
So it is completely filled with 80s pop culture. So the premise of the book is it's kind of a dystopian world.
Mm-hmm.
It's overpopulated, everything's terrible. But this guy who's dead now created a virtual reality game
Mm-hmm.
that basically everybody on the planet plays, and it's so pervasive that companies spend tons of money investing in players in the game,
Okay.
and so, it basically has become the economy of Earth. And he put in an Easter egg in the game, the original creator,
Mm-hmm.
that if you solve all these puzzles and get to the Easter egg, then you gain ownership of his company, which he left behind, which basically owns this game that the
Is in
the
control of the
entire
world.
world is invested in.
Interesting.
And so,
It's like the Matrix meets Wally.
yeah, yeah. So the complexity is that the conflict is one, all of the gamers want to get this Easter egg because they want to own
Hmm.
everything. But also there's this evil corporation who like they farm players. They just like pay these people and they can spend a ton of money to get them super equipped in the game, and they just like constantly throw them in there to try to find the thing. And then on top of that, they find out who the main character is and they start attacking him in the real world.
Oh,
So they're after him trying to kill him because they know
nice.
he's the only one with the chance to solve the puzzle
Cute.
because in the game, he solves the first riddle,
Mm,
which, or maybe it's the second one, I don't know, but he's the only one that's made progress in a ton of years. And so they're after
nice.
him to keep him from getting to the end.
I'll have to read that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it is a really good book. So the next one is seeing characters in conflict evokes empathy in readers. So as they relate to character struggles and root for their success, they empathize with their plight.
Hmm.
We have the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, begins with the Way of Kings.
Yeah.
So Kaladin, the main character, he gets enslaved. He's kind of a warrior, and then he gets thrown into slavery. And so then he's got these societal constraints on him. He's never going to aspire to a Bright Lord, is what they
Hmm.
call him. They have, cool powers and cool armor. But then he also has a lot of internal conflict dealing with his father. There's a relationship with his father and his younger brother.
Hmm.
Um, and so you can see like the family pulls, especially from the past, give you a big heart for him and what he's going through. And
Yeah.
then also like I think the oppressed, the slavery kind of motif kind of speaks to a lot of people these days, especially.
Yeah. All right. So conflict enhances realism and mirrors real life changes, lending authenticity and believability to the story. Um, for example, Twilight by Stephanie Meyer is a high school conflict with internal conflicts, interpersonal conflicts. So you've got, Bella and Edward, Bella and Jacob, Jacob and Edward, Bella and Mike, Bella and Jessica, like just all the relationship conflicts, right?
Right. And it's a YA novel, so it really speaks to the realism of being a teenager in high school.
Yeah, nobody understands me, nobody
Right.
gets me.
And she's, the outsider because she moves from Arizona to,
Yeah,
was it Washington?
Forks,
Forks,
Washington,
Washington. And so, she's awkward, she's
right?
clumsy, and all of these things.
And it also has the physical conflict of the other vampires that are trying to eat her.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer.
A little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be eaten. So conflict also can shape the structure of a story. It provides kind of a narrative arc to the novel. It often follows the traditional arc of rising action, climax, and resolution. So one that I have for this is Mistborn
Mm-hmm.
by Brandon Sanderson. So this follows the rise of a rebellion, started by Kelsier, and basically the whole novel is centered around this conflict. So kind of structures their plotting, their heist, trying to take over the Lord Ruler, who's this impossibly powerful guy.
Mm,
And so everything they're doing is aimed at that target.
right.
So that becomes the story structure.
Mm-hmm. Conflict generates themes. So through conflict, themes and deeper meanings emerge, allowing a novel to comment on broader human experiences and social issues. So the
Somehow you end
example
up with all the examples that I read.
I know the example you have is Atlas Shrugged, but I'll just pull in like the Hunger Games because
Yeah, go ahead.
um this is a really good one with themes,
Yes.
political themes that are very, especially today, like becoming very realistic.
Yeah. So you have the hyper rich, tyrannical cast who are
Yeah.
basically oppressing the rest of the world,
Mm-hmm.
which seems like that's more and more reality today.
Where most of like the high up rich population don't really understand the gravity of what's happening.
Right.
They're just running with the flow because they want the next hip fad and they're not paying attention.
They want all the free stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it catalyzes change. So conflict acts as a catalyst for change, forcing characters to make difficult decisions and grow in the process. So for this one, I have The Hobbit. So Bilbo Baggins' confrontations with various characters and creatures change him, from a timid hobbit into a cunning and brave adventurer.
Mm-hmm.
So when, you know, Gandalf first, is it Gandalf? It is Gandalf. Who's the guy in Harry Potter? Dumbledore. Sorry. It's not him. I always get them mixed up, and this time I got it right, but it stumped me because I got it right. So when Gandalf shows up on his front door, he's just this very timid guy. He just wants to have his tea and cheese and second breakfast and do nothing
Yep.
except for tend his garden and read books. But by the end of it, you know, he becomes this adventurer. He's a burglar, and like he even has some very heroic moments. You know, saving the lives of some of the other dwarves that are with him. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been reading The Hobbit again, picking it back up, and I got through the part where they're um with the trolls.
oh
The
yeah,
dwarves are being taken by the trolls, and
the guys with the Cockney accent.
yeah, Bilbo doesn't actually save them from the trolls. Gandalf does, but
Gandalf does, yeah.
um, it talks about Bilbo's thought process in like what a good burglar should have done,
Right.
which is kind of like the beginning of his transformation into acting on those thoughts
Yeah.
and things.
Yeah, the movie makes it out to where he has a bigger part in saving their lives
Hmm.
than the books do. Or
Yeah,
the book.
yeah. It's just Gandalf
Right.
making voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
So conflict provides a platform for action, leading off often leading to action-packed scenes that add excitement and vibrancy to the narrative. Once again, our example is a book that I have not read, Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein.
Yep.
Heinlein?
Heinlein.
Heinlein. So there's a military conflict with alien species, leading to action-packed battles and discussions on the nature of war. Um, I'm trying to think of another example that I would know. I don't want to say Hunger Games because that's literally all I've talked about the entire podcast.
Yeah.
Providing platform for action. I mean, I read a lot of books with action in them.
I mean, any of the
Any?
Harry Potter
Mm-hmm.
books would fit because, you know, Voldemort is this ultimate evil conflict. And like that is the platform for the entire story.
Right.
It's all about fighting back against impending doom from
Mm-hmm.
Voldemort.
Yeah. Any book where you have magic at play,
Yeah,
you're gonna have a lot of like that kind of conflict with that like spicy action.
right. Yeah.
Not spicy action in the bad way.
Yeah, we won't talk about
That's not what I meant.
that. That's not what I meant.
We're not on that side of the book world.
Speaking of Twilight, no. 13. Showcases morality, so conflicts often pit good against evil or present moral dilemmas that explore the complexity of human nature and ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And so, an example I have for this is The Chronicles of Narnia, any of them by C.S. Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
So, it often pits characters in moral conflicts that represent the battle between good and evil, and a lot of Christian allegory or symbolism can be found in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm.
So right off the bat, in the very first one, you have Edmund, who's got this dilemma because you know he's kind of a twerp, and so he ventures over and like makes this pact with the queen because she gives him num nums.
Mm-mm. Turkish delight.
And then he lies about it later. Like he's like, no, I've never been here. And then he ends up like betraying them and going and teaming up with her. But then that leads to
Yeah.
Aslan having to sacrifice himself for Edmund. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's lots of moral dilemmas there. Another one, which I didn't put on here and I didn't think about till just now, was one of the Ender series. I can't remember the name of it. But it takes place on this planet. It's a planet that's colonized by humans. And the humans that end up there are in danger. There's something in the air, there's something in the environment that infects them. And so they constantly have to take this drug to keep it at bay. Because if they don't, then they'll end up turning into trees.
Okay.
So that's a lot of conflict right there. But the huge conflict um, comes when the hegemon of Earth, it's like the big government, finds out about it, and they find out that people are wanting, might possibly want to leave that place,
Mm-hmm.
in which case they would infect like they're possibly the rest of humanity
Oh, okay.
and pass this virus on. And so they've sent this planet destroyer basically, and it's on
Oh,
its way
dang.
to wipe out this entire planet. And then you've got um, some morality mixed in with the piggies is
Mm-hmm.
the native species. They're like a pig-like race. But one of the things they do is I can't remember why or if there's a specific reason, but they considered a great honor at the end of their life, kind of, is like one of their best friends has the honor of basically like slaughtering and sacrificing them while they're alive
Mm.
and like taking their organs out and placing them in a pattern while they're alive.
What?
And from that, they sprout into a tree and they become like part of the grandfathers of the race. They're like passing on the legends and stuff, and so the trees and the piggies they have this kind of thing, but then the humans are faced with this dilemma of like, do we just allow them to sacrifice people?
Yeah.
And they inadvertently do this to one of the humans, unfortunately,
Whoops.
not realizing that they don't have the same effect on humans.
Oh.
And so then the humans are like, well, like, was that murder? Like, do we retaliate? Or
Right.
anyway, the book is full of these moral,
Oh,
ethical type conundrums.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. It's a
That's the
fascinating
point.
book.
That's the conflict.
Yeah, that is the conflict. Yeah. It forces you to think through a lot of these types of issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, 14.
Okay, so conflict stimulates imagination and encourages readers to think about how they would handle similar conflicts, engaging their imagination and problem-solving skills. For example, Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll stimulates the imagination as Alice navigates conflicts in a nonsensical world.
Yes, very imaginative.
I have never thought to myself, how would I have reacted if I was in Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah,
That's not something I do frequently. When I'm reading books, I
yeah.
actually don't think to myself, how would I react in this situation?
You don't.
Because I feel like when I'm reading a book, I take on the personality of the main character.
Similar.
So I don't feel like I make decisions separate from them,
Right. Yeah.
you know? I read books weird. I feel like we've talked about this a lot.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so the last one we have is that conflict promotes resolution and closure.
Yeah.
So conflict leads to resolution, or it's not a great book, providing a satisfying conclusion to the story's problems and the reader's expectations. So Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, I've already mentioned it, but like it's the whole three-book series, which I think we've talked about this before, but he envisioned them as one book. So he wrote them as like a single story.
Hmm.
But I think the publisher said, no, that needs to be three books.
Can you imagine a book that big? It's like a Sanderson
Yeah,
novel.
it's like a Sanderson novel. But the resolution and closure in that story is phenomenal.
Hmm.
Like, the king, the true king, Aragorn, is returned to his proper role. The hobbits. It's not so much in the movies, but if you actually read the book, the hobbits, like one, they're the hero of the story, but then they go back to Hobbiton and have more conflict because Saruman, the wizard, and Wormtongue,
Uh-huh.
they go to Hobbiton and like take over, and they're like enslaving all the hobbits, and so Sam and Frodo and Merry Pippin, they all go in and like kick him out and
Mm-hmm.
take the town back. So there's like it's a resolving conflict
Mm-hmm.
that adds even more resolution because then the greater conflict and resolution of the world is miniaturized into just Hobbiton. And then, of course, spoiler alert, Frodo goes off with the elves,
Hmm.
which means he dies.
Yeah. You don't talk about closure. Let's talk about closure. Probably one of my favorite book series of all time, Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, has such a beautiful ending with great closure. And I'm so mad because she's writing another series and she pulls this world into the new series,
Oh yeah.
which is modern,
Oh no.
and they have technology and like pizza and mail and phones, right? And she's pulling in this fantasy world and she's disrupting the closure.
Hmm.
Like if you're an author and you write a book and it has beautiful closure, don't mess it up. I like the characters to be happy at the end. Stop messing with them.
Yeah.
Let my babies be happy.
I think most people like happy endings.
Yeah.
It's a nice closure, even if there's some sadness, like one of the main characters dies. Like, I can't remember if it's Fred or George die at the end of Harry Potter.
I think it's Fred.
Fred, that's very sad, but there's a lot of closure in the end, and it's a
Yeah.
happy ending.
You want to know a book without closure? Divergent. Not Divergent. What is it? Allegiant. I think that's the last one.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. That was the worst. There was no closure because you sacrifice the main character
yeah.
for no reason. And then the other main character, who at this point has no personality because his personality is the main character, they talk about for like 3 chapters how depressed he is, and then the book ends. Have they solved the government issues? No. Have they solved any of the other conflicts that were brought up at the beginning of the first book? No.
And that's the end of the
That's
series?
the end of the series.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Is she planning on writing more?
No.
That's so weird. Yeah, not good.
Not good. The only other book she wrote after the end of that book was she rewrote the first book from the boy's perspective.
I don't like when authors do that.
Me either.
I
I
I
read
don't
this already. I don't
or
want to read it again.
yeah, I've read this.
I've noticed that the only time authors do that is when it's a romance novel.
No, I've read it in other genres.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
because like in the romance novel, it's really popular because they're like, I want to know what the boy was thinking when he was falling in love with her.
Uh,
I'm like, I don't really care.
I'm gonna write one of those from the dog's perspective. Woof.
The human won't feed me.
Yeah. And since I just finished Twilight,
Yeah.
resolution and closure. As far as how much I like the book, I didn't really like it because it's not my cup of tea. It's YA. It's super cringy.
Mm.
Just teenage girl love romance with a vampire. Um, but from a technical perspective, writing within the genre of YA vampire romance, um, I think in the first book, she did a great job of resolving all the conflict earlier in the book.
Hmm.
Like all of the internal and interpersonal conflicts between the various people. So there's, this other guy, Mike, likes her, but that gets resolved because Mike's now with Jessica, and there's her and Edward's, conflict,
Yeah.
which they end up together, and she's actually taken in as a part of his family, and they're protecting her.
Hmm.
And then, the bad vampires are attacking. And so then all of that gets wrapped up at the end with what you would expect to be a happy romance ending. She's been rescued by the hero and he's there and you know, they've both professed their love for each other and blah.
For now.
For now.
Mhm.
Until
Too. Exactly.
until she decided she had to write more books.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in closing, what books have you read or are currently reading?
What books have I read? Man, I've been on a reading kick. Did I tell you about that circus book?
I think so.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah, I think you did.
I finished reading The Stranger in the Woods. which was kind of a biography
Yeah.
about the last hermit.
Oh, yeah.
I did not finish. I like DNF'd the book called Juniper and Thorn about 50% through because I realized that it was a horror retelling. That was very shocking in the middle of a book to think is a fairy tale retelling and then realize it's a fairy tale horror retelling.
Hmm.
Um,
That's a bit disturbing.
yeah, I was not down for that. That is not my jam.
I got
Um,
into a sci-fi space military book one time and realized halfway through that it was a space horror.
whoops. Yeah,
I pushed through, but
it's not a good time.
it offered a lot of
And
tense reading.
it wasn't like a horror, like I'm being chased through a house horror. It's like a psychological horror.
Oh, yeah.
Like just unsettling and creepy.
That might be even worse.
It was worse. It was not good. I read the first three of the Zodiac Academy books,
Oh, yeah.
which I do not recommend. It's like I told you earlier, it's like reading trashy TV. Like they're really bad, but I can't stop. So I'm just gonna read all of them and be done with it. I'm currently reading the fourth Zodiac Academy book, The Hobbit, The Return of the Wizard King, Maze Runner, and this book called Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, which it seems like from what I'm like 5% into the book is a like fantasy steampunk you've got mail type of story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You've got steamy mail.
No. I hope not. If it's you've got steamy mail, I'm gonna not finish that.
That it?
Yeah.
Is that all? Your 10 books? So I've got 3. I think I talked about this one last time, but I did finish it. It was Year Zero by Rob Reed.
Yeah.
It's kind of a humorous sci-fi with aliens and threatening to destroy the Earth.
Cute.
It was kind of written in the style of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Okay.
that type of humor, which it got a lot of 1-star reviews for that, which were funny to read. A lot of people hated the humor. I thought it was funny.
I love reading 1-star reviews of books.
Yeah. And so I also mentioned that I finished Twilight by Stephanie Meyer.
Good job.
And then I started another fiction one the other day, just listening to Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman.
I've heard good things about this.
And right off the bat, it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. Like
Yeah.
the writing is just very, very humorous. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So, to celebrate another season and to promote the podcast to more listeners, we are giving away 3 books on writing: Wordsmithy, Hot Tips for the Writing Life by Doug Wilson; On Writing and Writers by C.S. Lewis; Adorning the Dark, Thoughts on Community, Calling, and the Mystery of Making by Andrew Peterson. To enter the giveaway, go to the website writingoncaffeine.com. You just need to enter your email address, and then there are some sharing options that will give you more entries. And thank you for joining us in this episode of Writing on Caffeine. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. Please subscribe wherever you find podcasts. If you are so inclined, leave us a review. 5-star reviews are preferable. Be sure to visit the website writingoncaffeine.com, where you can view the show notes and subscribe to our email list so that you never miss an episode.
Bye.
Bye-bye.